Hi, I'm Bill Niffen. Thanks for joining me for this entry of the Jesusblog. The other day I heard someone say that the average person has about 3,000 thoughts in any given day. And I got to thinking, wow, that's a lot of thinking. And of course there's that old phrase, we give somebody a penny for their thoughts. And that made me think a little bit further. Is there a value in thoughts? And of course the answer to that is yes, because thinking really controls a lot about us. It controls our emotions, it affects our personality, it affects what we do and how we do it. But today we're going to turn back to the great commandment and we're going to take a look at loving God with our hearts and with our souls today. And after we've had a chance to talk a little bit about that, we're going to figure out what role our thoughts play in how we love God and how we demonstrate our love for Him. Let's take a look at Mark chapter 12, verse 30.
And one of the scribes came and heard them arguing, and recognizing that he had answered them well, asked him, "What commandment is the foremost of all?" Jesus answered, "The foremost is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and ye shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength."
It's interesting to note that the very first two things that Jesus commands us to do in order to love God is to love Him with our heart and to love Him with our soul. Now it's real important to know that Jesus is quoting Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 4 and 5. And when Moses told the Israelites that they should love God with all their heart, to them that meant that they should love Him with all of their thoughts. For the Hebrew or the Israelite, the heart was the place from which thoughts emanated, and the mind was the place from which emotions emanated. So what Jesus is saying is that in order to love God, the first thing we have to do is we have to make sure that we have thoughts that honor Him. Thoughts that hold Him in esteem and that hold Him in regard, just like we talked about last week when we talked about love. The second thing that Jesus says is that we need to love God with all of our soul. And we can think of that as our sense of consciousness and our personality. That's kind of the who we are. So what Jesus says is love God with all your heart, which is the way that you think, because the way that you think affects your personality. In fact, Paul elaborated on this a little bit more in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Let's take a look and see what he had to say.
Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence and if anything worthy of praise, let your mind dwell on these things. Please note that Paul was writing in Greek and that the Greek concept of mind would have been thoughts rather than the emotions.
What Paul is telling us is that if we really want to have a good godly life, we've got to control our thoughts. We've got to think about things that are true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and of good repute and are worthy of praise. Because when we do that, we've replaced our old thinking with the mind of Christ. And when we do that, we show our love for Him because we're showing esteem and regard. That results in deliberate choices. And those deliberate choices in the way we think affect the rest of our lives. As the writer of Proverbs said in chapter 4, verse 23, we have to guard the thought thinking in our hearts. Why? Because from it flow the springs of life. The Proverbs writer understood that our personality, the who we are, our souls, are dependent on how we think. He also understood that our emotions are affected by our thoughts. And last but not least, our willingness to do God's work, to show our love for Him with our strength and our effort, is also controlled by our thinking. Well, how are you doing in your thought life? Well, if you're like me, you have some great days. Days where you're thinking about things that are true, things that are honorable and right and pure and lovely, and worthy of praise. And other days, you fall into stinking thinking, and frankly, your thoughts might even not be worth a penny, just like my thoughts aren't. You buy into the lies of Satan, or you dwell on things that are not right, or you think about how somebody is just kind of a jerk and you just really don't have a good charitable attitude toward them. Well, if you find yourself in that boat along with me, there's good news. The good news is that we can have the mind of Christ every day. And as we're told in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, we should not be conformed any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed daily by the renewing of our minds. And if we do that, we'll find ourselves holding God in the esteem and regard that we should. Well, please come back and visit me next week, when we're going to take a look at the second half of the Great Commandment and the ways that we love God. Until then, may God bless you and keep you, and may you have a closer walk with Him.